We are a global platform for inclusive businesses, and in our network of 260 companies, we have a big number of women-led companies, women business owners that are driving inclusive businesses in different geographies, in all kinds of sectors, in technology, in healthcare, in renewable energy. You would feel that those are spaces women entrepreneurs don't exist, but they do, and we found them. And I'm very happy to have this discussion with a few of them today. So we started working with women business owners a few months ago. It coincided with the onslaught of the COVID-19 crisis, but that was just a coincidence. I'm just going to go ahead and mute everybody. Thank you. So we'd already been thinking about how we could get women business owners and women-led businesses to grow and scale, and what were the barriers that prevented them from doing so. And we started this conversation sometime in April, and we had a discussion with about 15 women entrepreneurs, and we tried to do a little bit of a survey. And this is what we found at that time, and we asked, what do you find are the main barriers you faced to grow in your professional career? And a lot of them, as you can see, there were some social barriers and cultural barriers, flexible time, family norms, education, but also there were some also fundraising barriers, mobility barriers, and lack of mentorship. There's a conversation that we had over and over again about accessing resources and the right networks to position yourself. And then another question we asked the women entrepreneurs that we work with is, how can we help you to kind of overcome these barriers through the network that we have, leveraging the UNDP network, also the companies that can learn from each other in a peer-to-peer learning manner, and how can we bring this community of women business owners to basically to be able to pull each other up and to provide kind of best practices and solutions that others can learn from. So what did we see was the needs were this, you can see mentorship, resources, dialogue with other CEOs, both men and women, again, mentoring support from other business leaders, opening up opportunities, network, funding, success stories. How do we link ourselves to these opportunity networks that already exist? So we know there are solutions that are out there. There are organizations that are out there working for women entrepreneurs, and we have one right now here, two of them who will be speaking shortly. But how do we connect them to those that need it? So that's the main goal for today. And I'm going to now introduce the moderator for the discussion today. Diana is the manager for Global Program for Business for Gender Equality at the UNDP. Diana needs no introduction, but I think I have to say that she has a decade of experience working with private sector and innovative solutions, and she's very, very passionate about gender equality. So over to Diana. I'm going to make you a presenter, and please go ahead and share your slides.
Thank you, Rabel, and thank you so much for this invitation. Let me see if I can share my screen, just because I want to share a couple of statistics with you, just to give you like some sort of appetizer to start this discussion. So let me see, Rabel. It says that there's an error. I have no the access to share my screen.
Yeah. Do you see the fourth button that says share your screen?
I see it, but it says there's an error.
What about, there's a few tabs. I have your slides if you'd like me to go through them.
Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Go ahead. No. What is amazing about talking about how can we empower women through inclusive finance is that we need to recognize that we are still lagging behind. Although we have had an amazing progress over the last, let's say, 50 to 60 years in the labor markets, we are massively entering in the labor force, but we're still lagging behind and having a lot of difficulties accessing assets and resources. Even though right now we are, we have accumulated more skills in some countries and in some cases more than men. So Rabel, if you can move on to the next slide, I would like to start sharing a couple of things with you regarding the access of women to financing. We still see that there is a gap. It's not that large, but still we have a gap in account ownership, which is probably one of the most basic things that we have access to when it comes to the financial services, having a bank account. And you can see it there. Women have access, 64% of women have access to bank accounts compared to 71% of men. And when it comes to mobile money accounts, we still see that, and it's so related to the gender digital gap. We see that both men and women still don't have access to that type of financial instruments that in some cases also help to access different services and different assets. So I think that to start, that's something that it's good to say. The second thing is that in terms of ownership of companies and in terms of leadership, still we have a massive gap there. Close to 35% of firms have female participation in ownership globally, and only 18% have a woman as a top manager. And when we look at the facts and statistics of, for instance, the 500 largest companies in the world, only 5.8% of CEOs are women. So we still have a long way ahead in terms of leadership and both ownership. When it comes to microfinancing, the balance starts to go against men, let's say, when it comes to the gender gaps. Globally, there are close to 140 million people which are borrowers of microfinancing institutions, and clearly women are the ones that have more access to it. And it also shows a reality, and it's because we are facing many structural barriers to access, larger credits. Also, as we are proprietors of SMEs mostly, and most of them are informal, we have to access another kind of, financial instruments just to leverage our financial capacities. If you go to the next slide, it's important to say something about the SMEs and the overrepresentation of women as proprietors of SMEs. And you can see that globally, the biggest concentration of SMEs, female owners, are in the Europe and Central Asia region, and also in Asia and the Pacific. You can see it there, close to 60%. And roughly there are close to 10 million SMEs globally, let's say formal SMEs. And a third of those are owned by women. And when it comes, as I said before, to the difficulties and barriers that women face in terms of getting the financial assets or resources to grow their business, there are a lot of structural barriers. And when it comes to the COVID crisis, I think that even the realities and those challenges and those bottlenecks that we are facing are even bigger. And I'd like you to move to the next slide, Robbie, because this is something that is affecting both SMEs which are owned by men or women, but it's something that it's so important to assess, just because during the lockdowns that we had between March and April, and in some cases that those lockdowns that were more prolonged to June, July, really affected the possibility of survival of SMEs and especially of women-owned businesses. And this is appalling to me. When we see what is the median, cash buffer that an average SME has, it's less than 30 days. This is when I have to cover my expenses, but I have no income. And when it comes to the different, sectors and industries that you can see there, retail and restaurants are the most affected, only 16 or 18 days. So that's why it's so important to start making these reflections in terms of how we can move forward the access of SMEs to financing, to capital, to cover, those cash flow needs. And how can we protect those SMEs that have been hardest hit, and those that have been, that are owned by women, especially because we have to understand that probably those businesses that will close, or that already closed operations, will never go back in business. That's why it's so crucial to protect them. And if you go to the next slide, we can see that there's clearly a gap on SME financing globally. And when we see what is the formal women MSME finance gap, it's close to $1.7 trillion. And I think that there's a huge opportunity, but we need to overcome what we see as structural barriers to access those resources. Some of them are more financial because of the lack of collaterals, and even related to some, biased processes, but others are more related to those non-financial barriers. The care work burden, even the human capital accumulation, even the size of the companies, which is smaller, even our own capacity to build networks.
Diana, sorry, you got muted. Can you just unmute, please? Sorry.
Now? Okay. I don't know what happened. So now finally, just to open the floor to this amazing panel, my last reflection, it's more related to how the gender-lens investing field is a growing field. We have now more and more investors that are, valuing all those criteria which is more related to diversity, to inclusion, and that are incorporating really the gender perspective when it comes to build an investing portfolio. And it's a growing market, both in the public and the private markets, and we can see very important growth between 2017 and 2018 in the worth of those portfolios, and also the number of funds that are considering gender strategies, or gender criteria to also to make the investments. And the number of funds which were also launched is also growing bigger and bigger. So I believe that we need to start separating the type of investment and the type of financing that is needed according to the reality of women, according to the sector, according to the type of company, the size. And but I think that the problem is not the money itself. Resources are there. The thing is, how can we overcome those structural barriers that are affecting both men and women, but especially women when it comes to access the resources, when it comes to discuss about collaterals, when it comes to, how can we grow bigger our businesses, and we can take care of our kids and all the responsibilities that we already have, but also grow our businesses. So I think that we have this amazing panel, and this will be an opportunity to discuss and dig deeper into the barriers and these bottlenecks that we are, facing, but also try to envision some of the things that we can do. I think that one of the most powerful things that we can do is, to create these peer support networks to support each other. And I think that's why this initiative that the Business Call to Action is putting in place, about just to, putting you together to discuss, to talk about your challenges and how you can support each other. I think that's something that is really important.
It's a company that, imagine that you are selling to Walmart something, and you convince Walmart to enter to put your product in 5 stores. As you know, Mexico is a huge country. So imagine that one day Walmart called you back and say, okay, I like your product, now I want to go national. The problem that a company has in this moment is huge, because the company will need money to produce more inventory and to transform that company in a little one into a big one that be able to supply in a national way to Walmart. So if these kind of companies apply to Biguala, it's super easy because into 10 days they will have the money, and then we are totally attached to your revenues. So we think that this could be a huge solution for this problem that we know that exists, that is this limited access for women-led companies to financial instruments. I don't know if that's it.
Perfect. With the big apologies, Lucky, I think we would definitely really like to hear from you. Take it away. Lucky is the founder of Biomass Group, and she's joining us at really late in Sri Lanka, but we're very happy to have you. Please tell us, as a business owner, what has been your journey?
Okay, so thank you for having me. Thank you very much to the TCA. It's the second year running that you've done this with me, so big thank you. So I'm an entrepreneur. I have a background in media for a good 20 plus years. I published a book about climate change in 2006. So I'm really sad to tell you about everything that I'm watching and reading today. The author of that book, Paul Brown, he actually predicted in 2006. Extremely depressing to see all of these things happening right now. But that book made me realize that we have a carbon problem and we have an energy problem, and that I wanted to get into something that was other than book publishing, or media, which was renewables, and also look at inclusive development. And also I have a background, a Bachelor of Science in environment and geography, so it was a natural journey for me to transition. So since 2010, I started looking into the energy field, and in 2014, I moved back to Sri Lanka. I was actually living in London when I had published that book. So the first takeaway I'd like to tell everybody who's here listening to this is that anything is possible in this life if you put your mind to it. If you're a woman, do not have barriers or boundaries that think that, you know, what the hell, I didn't know anything about energy. In 2010, I knew nothing. And today I'm giving speeches on this, and not only this, but on IRENA and a few other conferences. So the first takeaway I'd like you to think about is that don't put up artificial barriers to yourselves. Next slide. Thank you. So what I set up in the Biomass Group, which I think is the most applicable for this particular session, is a company called the Biomass Group, which we incorporated in Singapore in 2012, and then in 2013 set up shop in Sri Lanka. And it's a very simple concept. It was a concept by somebody I met on my travels when I was looking for something to do. And his idea was very simple. Somebody grows a tree called Glursidia. Glursidia, by the way, is originally from Mexico, Central and South America. This is a tree that grows throughout the whole of South America, but it was brought about 300 years ago by the Portuguese to be a support tree for coffee, a shade tree for coffee, and also support tree for pepper, etc. But it grows now everywhere. It grows in Sri Lanka, it grows in Asia, it grows in the Caribbean, it grows in Equatorial Africa. It's basically on the entire equator. So our business model is extremely simple. I don't own land. I'm not interested in becoming a landowner. I'm not interested in becoming a planter. I work with anybody who has land. So mostly smallholder farmers. I mean, in Sri Lanka, we have about 1.5 million smallholder farmers. We also have private estates, the Catholic Church, Buddhist temples. There's land under the state. So everybody who has land. And we do not encourage any kind of monocultivation. So I'm really, really, really anti-monocultivation and chopping down forests. What we encourage people to do is to plant a row of trees around their land parcel, whether it's big or small, and then try and get that to become a three-row fence. The three-row fence has multiple purposes because it, for example, keeps out wild elephants and wild animals. If you have this, so it serves a good purpose. Secondly, Glursidia is a tree that fixes atmospheric nitrogen. So we have a problem with carbon dioxide. This tree sequesters carbon, but it also takes atmospheric nitrogen and fixes it in both the leaves and also the root structure. So it is a massive soil improver. It helps biodiversity and it helps soil health. And it really supports regenerative agriculture. So what we do is we encourage everybody to plant this tree, first of all, on their boundaries of their land parcel, and then to intercrop with their existing cash crops. So if you're in the tropics, which is where I am, the sun is hot this morning. It was 35 degrees out there, and the sun shines from east to west. So when you have your alley of cash crops and you plant a row of Gliricidia trees from east to west, it also supports a little bit of shade to your cash crops, so your crops are better off. And then by using the leaves, you can use the reason people plant Gliricidia is not to sell anything to me. They plant because the leaves can provide fertilizer, pesticide, fungicide, microbial cultures. And what we have done in the last 5 years is provide capacity. Now, when we started doing our capacity building, if you like, in villages, what we observed was the fact that 90% of the time, it's a woman of the household who comes along to the training sessions because she is drinking well water, and well water is being contaminated by the excessive use of chemicals and fertilizer runoff. So the first thing that we started noticing was that an enormous number of women are basically connecting with us. And secondly, this tree is not complicated to do. If you have trees, and everybody has some level of this tree, some have 200 trees, some have 500 trees, some have 50 trees. All you have to do is cut a branch and then plant it in the ground, and it becomes a tree. So it's not like it's a complicated tree to do either, and you don't have to pay for it. So we basically educated people of plant this tree. You already have 500, make it 2,000. If you have 50, make it 500. The minimum ticket ask we have of a farmer is that you have at least 500 trees, because otherwise economically it doesn't really, the maths doesn't work for you. And then we teach them, okay, now instead of taking the fertilizer subsidy that the government gives you and goes and buying chemical or artificial chemicals, which are oil-based, why don't you do what your great-grandfather did, which is to use these leaves to make fertilizer and to make your own pesticide and to make your own fungicide and to make all your own microbial cultures, because all of that will improve soil health, help biodiversity. You're not poisoning your own water table. 70% of Sri Lankans do not have piped water. They drink well water. So if you contaminate your soil and you have monsoon rain and then you end up destroying your own well water, you have a problem yourself. So that's really our business model as a business. We have what we've also noticed, if you teach a woman what to do, she tends to do it. She has time on her hands. She is motivated to look after her children. She is worried about the health of her children, and she cares about the environment that she habits. And she is not lazy compared to a man. So I'm just being very rude. So apologies for any male who's watching this, but basically we have observed that the take-up with women was enormous. So about 90% of our relationships is with the female of the household. And just teaching her, here's how you can do this. We've gone back into those villages and we've been amazed to see the amount of planting that has been going on. So now the next step for us is to look at how we can do what we call a village coordinator project. So right now, I employ 46 people today, and a small core office in Colombo, and then we have 35 field offices. But 35 field offices cannot be in 15 places at the same time. So what we're now looking at doing is putting in another layer underneath those field offices, effectively making our field offices, by the way, 50% of our field offices are women, which is also something that I'm very proud of. These field offices will have what we call village coordinators working under them. And this is basically one woman in the village who is the representative for the village. And her job is to coordinate all the other village people to plant Gliricidia, and then at some stage or other, be a conduit to market. We do use technology. We built a technology platform, so every farmer is registered. It allows us to provide full traceability and transparency in our supply chain. We are RSB certified since 2015, and last week I'm happy to say we got SLSI certified in Sri Lanka. We're the only company to have that. So when we sell fuel wood, which is basically the branches of the tree that we buy, to industry as a replacement for furnace oil, we can provide a certification so that they can actually apply to be a B Corp or have prove their own supply chain. So that's really our business. If somebody grows a tree, we buy a branch, they use the leaves, we monetize the branch into something. I was asked to talk about, what my experience was during COVID and lockdown and everything else. Well, interestingly enough, we've been developing the company for the last few years. Trees take 3 years to grow. So in the time that it takes a tree to grow, you can't really generate revenue. So we didn't really have that much revenue to start with until last year, right? And I was fortunate to have some investors and some funding that allowed that took that on board. But the trees did become ready to harvest last year, and what we also noticed was our competitors, who are basically a man, a van, and a saw, and he would just go and indiscriminately chop down any forest and deliver to industry. Suddenly found that because of COVID, he was not allowed to go out and cut forests because he's not a company, he's an individual. So we suddenly found that companies suddenly started asking us for fuel wood. And our sales have been growing very steadily since last year, slowly, but after COVID, things really started to take off in some ways. And now we have a number of companies knocking on our door because they want stability in their supply chain. They need it to be green. They need it to be traceable. They need it to be proven. And the fact that we tick all of these boxes in terms of SDGs, in terms of female empowerment and biodiversity, also means that they get the opportunity to market the fact that they have got this. So what I would say about COVID and my lessons to learn from COVID is really to ensure survival of a business, and cash flow is an issue always, and has been from the day we started, is basically to be very innovative in how you go about finding customers. Yeah, so we originally worked with the apparel sector. They got really hammered during the COVID period. So we moved to the food sector and to distilleries. To have some level of resilience in how you approach things. We had to take some hard decisions this year. There were some contracts that came up for renewal, which we did not extend. So it's a question of really, first of all, batten down the hatches, understand what business you're in, and understand what you need to do to get to the next goal, and take baby steps. And then having those and being creative in finding opportunities in what to do. So we have started to find very many interesting opportunities. And I think that demonstrates a level of resilience. And that is something that is possible through thinking creatively. You need to go back to the previous slide for a second. The key thing in this thing is to be agile, opportunistic, but mostly to collaborate. If you collaborate, you will get a lot done. So yesterday, one of the big banks in Sri Lanka, who is not known to be giving any kind of grants, gave us a grant for the first time. We are talking to a multinational DFI, again, for a grant. Next Monday, I've got a meeting with a government entity about a grant. So I think provide a mechanism which allows you to collaborate with not only private sector entities, but also banks and institutions, and look at how you can create a win-win situation for your business to survive. So that was what I would say is the key takeaways from my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I personally find your business model very inspiring. And I remember what you said when we were talking earlier this week, and you're like, I just bully the banks. So the persistence and the perseverance that you've shown, I think we can all learn from it. Being mindful of our time, I want to go to Maya, who's here joining us from Georgia and is part of a microfinance that provides credit to women. And if you can, Maya, keep it to within 5 to 7 minutes, and then we can
all right.
Diana, take another 15 minutes to have some questions. I really encourage those that you've been on the call with us so far or joining more recently to use the chat function to write down questions. And you can also just raise your hand, open your audio, join us in the discussion. Over to you, Maya.
All right, thank you very much. It's really great to be here among those really amazing trailblazers and interesting women. And also interesting to share our perspective as from the country of Georgia, from microfinance organization. And you'll see there's so many things that we share and that are in common that I have heard now from like hearing from other women. I thought as if I was talking on their places. So to start with, the company that I represent, Crystal, was founded around 22 years ago in the country of Georgia. This is a very difficult time, so I will not go into the history because we don't have that many time. But the fact itself that after 22 years, the microfinance organization that started with $10,000 as a grant and now operates in more than 50 branches in Georgia. And Georgia is a very small country, 4.5 million people, for those who might not know the scale of the country. And to have more than 100,000 customers, around 1,200 staff members, and to operate in the rural areas where men and women, but most women, are unbanked, unservable, and that's where we are very proud to serve them. So that's very briefly. Now, in the times of COVID-19, resilience is difficult always, right? But it's difficult to stay resilient in the face of high demand or in this changing circumstances. So one of the projects that we did with the help of USAID Georgia Youth Entrepreneurship School under the Youth Entrepreneurship School Yes Georgia program was starting the component of Bus Georgia. So originally it had to be the bus going from one place to another, and empowering women with self-awareness raising, with financial literacy, etc. But then the COVID-19 happened, and so then we sit down and say, like, what do we do now? We teach others that we have to remain resilient in the times of difficulties and crisis, and now this is the thing that we have to do by ourselves to show an example on our example. So we moved all our off-site trainings and travels into our own rooms, and so we started the distance learning courses of Buzz Georgia component of empowering women. So the basic question perhaps would be, what are the things that we teach in those times, and what were the values? What are the values of doing it? So first and foremost, I think what Diana mentioned very beautifully, and also Lucky, were the keywords of their presentations were network, collaboration, that women share, and that everything is possible in life, right? So those things were also our beliefs when we decided to start the Buzz Georgia component online distance. And having those trainings since June, we have already trained around 300, 400 women from different regions of Georgia. So what we do on Saturdays and Sundays for 5 and 5 hours, we talk about those things that had already been mentioned. Collaboration. What are the main challenges? What are the things that really matter for those women? And what are the things where they find the most impossible to realize? Whether it's financial inclusion, whether it's access to finance, where we, of course, come with the help and with our resources. So what this journey since April, March till today have taught us in this journey of helping women. This is one of the pictures that you see is from one of our trainings, online trainings of Buzz Georgia, where you see one of our participants with a baby participating actually together. And so we had a lot of lessons learned, and also, to use this behavioristic economic term, a lot of unknown unknowns, because the whole journey was experimental, trial and error. But what we have found out was exactly what already had been mentioned by Lucky and also Diana. First, it's collaboration and that women share. So we believe that when you teach something to a woman about financial literacy, about self-esteem, it never stays with a woman. They share with their husbands, with their father-in-laws, with their mothers, with their daughters, with their children, with their neighbors in the villages. So we naturally, or biologically, as you wish, we are sharers. So this is the first thing and the biggest value. Second, those women, especially in the regions, had to sit down in their homes for days without knowing what would the future bring. And this is the most difficult time when you don't know what the future will bring. For more developed cities or countries, maybe there were a lot of information on the internet. They didn't have that much access to the internet, or they don't read English or any other foreign languages in which this information is accessible. So you are alone with your own dreams or with your own fears. So where Bas Georgia came in with those advanced glance simple trainings was building resilience in those women. First, by talking to them, by collaboration, by realizing that we are in this together. Secondly, by providing them with financial access and talking about their plans with the different methodologies, whether it's lean methodology or smart methodology, talking about their dreams. And then while talking and hearing also from other similar women from different regions of Georgia, they realized that they are not alone, and that if one could do something and overcome the challenge, then others could also do that. And most importantly, one of the biggest realizations was that resilience is not, it's like all or nothing. It can come with small portions. And for instance, with the resilience that we started in April, in June, and then experimenting with our trainings and training materials, it didn't work, of course, the way we planned it, because it had to be offsite in the women's places, in the libraries, and in the different places, in face-to-face meetings. So to cut a long story short, and if we can go to another slide, I have only 2 slides for today. One of the biggest lessons learned from this whole Bas Georgia Women Empowerment Training was that what brought us here will not get us there. So all the plans that we had for 22 years, or maybe the plans and strategies for the next coming another 5 or 10 or 20 years, we had to change them because of this unexpected COVID situation, and because of a lot of other reasons that you are all very well aware of. So with that lesson of what brought us here will not get us there, I will finish my presentation, just sharing one additional detail, and then perhaps we will have Q&A where I will be more than happy to answer to your other questions, was that the Bas Georgia trainings allowed us to create the infrastructure where all those women could sit together online in their own homes, but talk about their dreams or future plans, and even about their fears.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much. I really find your story very fascinating as well, and I love that picture that you shared. I think all of us have seen that in our organizations as well. Diana, over to you. There is a question for Carla in the chat.
Thank you, Rafael. But I would like to start first before opening the round to the Q&A session with the public, or I would like to ask you one question for the three of you. What are the requirements, or how can women access either for Carla and Maya, your financial products, and for Lucky, how can they become part of your business? If you want to go first, Carla, go ahead.
Yes, of course. Super easy. As I mentioned, we work a lot to make a very super easy process. So right now we are working just in Mexico, the full country, and just need to go to our website, biguala.com, and then you enter there, and then you click in ask for a credit, and that's it. 2 minutes, type form, and then someone contact you very quick. So please do it. If you have questions, if you think that maybe you are not for these kind of things, just apply. Let us give you the information, because sometimes what we see is that women feel that need to require a lot of details and a lot of information, and they are not ready, but maybe they are ready. So this is very quick. Just apply, and then let us give you the information and say you if you are ready or not.
Great. You have to be a Mexican company?
Sorry, could you repeat it?
You have to be a Mexican company to apply, or?
Exactly. You have to be a Mexican company. till now.
Okay.
Maybe in some years we can go to Latin America. It's part of our plans, but right now we're working just in Mexico.
Sure. Maya, sorry that you wanted to say something. Maya.
Yeah, actually, that was my question. Can I also apply? That was my question. But then I got the
Yeah, sorry. Maybe one day for Georgia.
Sure.
Good. Maybe Maya, you can go ahead.
Yeah, this is the same with the Crystals and Yes Georgia's program, and with the Past Georgia component, that you have to be Georgian because the trainings are in Georgian on Saturdays and Sundays for 5 hours for each day during the weekends. The course is open. It's on our webpage, which is either ir.crystalg or crystalg, and on our Facebook and other social media pages, where we share the open call, where women have to fill in a very simple form stating their age, their occupation, what they do mainly, in which regions they represent, their age, and why they would love to, or why they would like to join the Past Georgia trainings. And then we have in advance the list of several hundred women, and we call every first 30 or 25 women for each next cohort of weekends. And also the women who are living abroad and are Georgian language speakers are the ones who apply, and this is also great help for them. Unfortunately, at this moment, it's only for Georgian speakers and for our customers or potential customers, or the people living in Georgia.
Good. Thank you, Maya. Lucky. You're muted.
Muted.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
Basically, everybody can be my supplier. So any female anywhere in this country who wishes to plant trees, provided they commit to planting 500 trees, can qualify to be a partner. And anybody who would like to be a village coordinator, we look for the right attitude. That's it. So we're
Super
very happy.
easy.
It's super easy.
Fantastic.
Going out on a major marketing promotion to say that too.
Good. Carla and Maya, I wanted to ask you, we know that a big part of the barriers that women face are related to collaterals. What are your collaterals? What kind of collaterals you're asking to grant your loans?
Of course, we are very flexible about collaterals. We understand that sometimes this is a big issue. And at the end depends of the risk and the amount of money that we have to lend and the term of the loan. So usually, if it's a little amount in a very short term, we can go without guarantee. Or rather, if it's a huge risk, long term, a lot of money, maybe we should ask. But we are doing everything. We are doing from no guarantee or no collateral to mobiliary collateral. We do everything in the middle. We do reference, we do prendari, things like cars and this kind of thing for no guarantee. We are trying to understand what the company really needs, and we always say that in Biguala, we want to give you the loan. So we will find a way.
Okay, that's good. And you, Maya?
Yeah, because when the microfinance organizations was found in Bangladesh, actually, and that was actually for the unserved and unbankable people, and the same, of course, the same operation, the same business model we operate under the National Bank of Georgia and Georgia as well as a microfinance organization. And our basic model is also that we don't, or very rarely, take collaterals, especially in the regions of Georgia and in the rural areas where women don't have. First and foremost, they don't have self-esteem to take the loan. So 62%, also this is a very interesting fact, 62% of our more than 100,000 customers are women. But when it comes to portfolio, the portfolio of our whole portfolio, it's around 40%, 38 to 40%. Why? Because women lack self-esteem, they lack resilience, they lack financial literacy and the basic knowledge about the finance. Even when it comes to negotiation or cooperation with the financial institutions like ours, like microfinance organizations. So we were very sad at first to see this. So of course, with the collateral, we don't take collateral, or we take in a very rare occasions. It's the risk department who decides in which parts the risk goes and raises, but most of the time we don't take collateral, and of course the commission and interest rates are accordingly.
And you know, Diana, sorry for interrupt, but I think that the big challenge in order to take or not collaterals, it's about the funders. The money that we are finding to really lend to our clients usually is asking for high rates of risk avoidance. So we have to be, we are doing a big effort to find more blended financial or funders for at least for Viguala, in order to try to come up with more flexible and less collaterals for our lenders, of course. This is very interesting.
No, that sounds amazing, because you understand what are the realities, your lenders are facing. Lucky, sorry to interrupt. Did you want to add something?
Yeah. It's something I've always been thinking about this. Now, I as a company, and I go and borrow money, and I'm forever asked for collateral, right? So what I think is something that perhaps if somebody's listening to this, could think about. All these donor monies that are given to development finance institutions who ask you to fill in 4 million pieces of paper to get the little loan, why that funding, that donor funding, be given to the commercial banks in the country to be the collateral base? I mean, why can that money not be put to better use? The commercial banks and the microfinance institutions, you know your customers better than anybody else on earth, right? So rather than going to a DFI or some other, World Bank type institution to provide your money to there, and then they have to give it to another person and blah, 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 why not simply say that pot of money, whether it is donor funds or philanthropy funds, can be used as the safety net, the caveat, the requirement that comes in, like, some others would come in. And it's just something that has always struck with me, is that you want to start a business, you're going to create wealth, and you're going to create employment. And one thing you are asked for is, if you have any wealth, is to give it up. And nobody in a bank would ever do that. So why don't we think differently about how we collateral problem?
Sure. You actually have to prove that you don't need the money for you to get the loan. That's one of the big problems. So, Lucky, in your own personal experience, what have been the major barriers you have faced to grow your business in terms of financial access to services, assets, investment, or whatever type of capital that you need to grow?
It's to raise money. Unfortunately, the geopolitical world looks at Europe, South Asia. South Asia basically means India. So if you're in Sri Lanka, which is this 21 million poor, only 21 million people in Sri Lanka, and then you have a billion people in India. Basically, everybody gives the money to India. So this project, if I had started in India, I would have been funded in a heartbeat. If I had started in Indonesia, same story. But because I'm in a country called Sri Lanka, and then so we have that problem. And so it's basically been funding all the time since I started this company. The biggest problem I've had is funding, is getting proper capital, enough capital. I don't have time for more money, and to do what I want to do with that. So that's I've had to grow. But we have grown in spite of all of that. Because as Rabin says, I do bully the bank.
Okay, that's tough. But I think that's amazing, the story that you have, because you've been able, in spite of the difficulties, to build a very successful business, and that's amazing. So I will give the floor now just for our final thoughts that maybe you have, just in terms of, recommendations or just final reflections on how can we support women's access to finance, how can we promote women's financial inclusion, how can we overcome those structural barriers that we have addressed today. So I will give the floor to Maya first.
Well, I think very often we think like as human beings, as we have already done historically, complicate things. We always complicate things. Whether it's business in a normal life, that happens also the same. But this COVID-19, and this world pandemic, if it had taught us anything, I think it's to start from very simple. And our example of Georgia training and this component was a really good evidence for that. How very simple thing like online trainings and talk with women, open up with them, show them that you care, and show the most important things, and talk about the purpose, about connection, collaboration, networking, these words that have been mentioned several times today. To start with the basics and not to go into very important things in Maslow pyramid, which we all know is important. But if this basics and very basics one, especially in the times when the times are hard, like the world wars, or whether it's this one thing that closes up all in lockdown, whether it's pandemic, it teaches us that we shouldn't forget about these basic things, which is networking. And luckily, it's possible to do it with the help of internet and nowadays technological development, and to use whatever we have in our hand, in our own room, in our own environment and society to make a difference, even on the smaller scale. Not to think that it's small. It's never too small, because from some of the women that we have heard from the training, these 10 hours have changed their mindset so hugely. You might not have thought that it's only 10 hours, right? But it really changed their mind, especially in the times of the lockdown when they didn't have anyone to talk to. So this is the first thing. And another thing is also the business of the business is society. And if we don't think, it's not like because we are kind, it's not because we are socially and environmentally responsible, which we are as a company, and we have won a lot of recognition and awards. If you go to our webpage of IIR Crystalgy, International Relations Crystalgy, you will see that. But not only because of that, but also thinking very also practically from the business point of view. The business of the business is society and is our environment. And if we don't take care of them, then we will not make even profit so this is also for the very for the ones who are not very gender friendly or environmental friendly or CSR friendly. That's my message, that it's the business of the business to do so and to care of the society, of the people they serve. We are all in the service, so that's, I think, basically remember all.
That's true. Thank you, Maya. Carla.
Yes, for me, the reflection is that we have there a huge gap for credit for women-led companies. So if we have, which is really, really, really big. So I think that we need to think about how to really fix and fill that gap. And for me, the solution is that we have to really first understand the drivers and how the women perform and how we think, and create first solutions for this kind of target, which is women. And in the other hand, work a lot with investors to be sure that everything is aligned in order to create a full product that really fill that gap. Why? Because first, investing in women is an amazing business. We repay very well. We really repay. We take we are very hard workers. And second, because every money that we will invest in women, at the end, we're going to finish in a family that will transform the world. So I am sure that women have the power to transform the world, so we have to invest in. So for me, this is my reflection.
Thank you, Carla. And Lucky.
My thing is that women, I think we've attained some level of independence and equality. We need to learn to really stand on our own 2 feet, have self-confidence and self-belief, and believe we can do things. Because I think, frankly, if you can have a baby, you can do anything in life. So I think it's having faith, self-confidence, and a willingness to take some risks. And really having the understanding of who you need to collaborate with, and making sure you reach out to those parties and forge those relationships and get the support you need and not be shy.
Thank you, Lucky. There are 4 things that are resonating right now in my mind. First is that you all mentioned that women are multipliers of benefits of the society or of their households, So it's good to invest in women because they multiply the benefits to the society as a whole. Second, the importance of collaboration, peer networking, and peer support. It's crucial women to support women to address those inequalities and structural barriers. Third, I think that it's an intricate relationship between the digital gap and financial literacy, even more now during the COVID crisis or the COVID economy. So that's something that we have to look into it, because if the digital economy keeps advancing at the pace that it's doing, even now with the COVID, we can't, afford leaving women behind. So that's something that we need to address, definitely. And finally, there's a huge financing gap, and the money is there. So how can we fill that? How can we attract the money? How can we, try to change those patriarchal patterns that affect that women get access to services and assets? So I think those are the 4 main reflections, Ravel. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you so much to these amazing panelists and the stories.
Thank you, everybody. I mean, this has been phenomenal. We do have in the main platform, there's a networking button, so feel free to connect to each other, or send each other messages or request meetings. This is just an hour-long space, but we have these people available to connect for more long-term as well. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening, night, afternoon, wherever you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. All the best. Bye.
Thank you.